Hi, Nekron here. I wanted to record a short video talking about some stuff after Grant's recent stream. So first of all, I don't really know why, but to me it feels like each time GGG plays this mod, I get a lot of DMs, and they can get pretty weird. And overall, like, I feel that his community sentiment is that well, I just feel that people get a little bit heated, and I think that's pretty weird because ultimately, you know, this is just a game, right? And you can play it or you can not play it. And if you like it, that's fine. If you don't like it, that's fine. Overall, I think Grant himself has been really respectful. I don't have anything against him. And I enjoyed seeing him play. And I appreciate, you know, being exposed to some more people. And I really appreciate the people that have interacted with me positively. But like I said, there have been a couple of people that have been a little bit weird. I hope that there's like... I don't really know how to express this. I ultimately hope that there's like nothing, you know, there's no big deal. There's nothing really bad happening, or I guess that the mod didn't make anyone really mad. In the case that it did, you know, like I said, it's just a game, a mod for a game, so I would hope that I'm not the cause of anyone losing sleep over this or something. So having said that, I wanted to respond to some topics that I have seen come up throughout the stream, mainly from the commenters. Because I figured, you know, I have been usually pretty hands-on when it comes to responding to people in the community. I also think that my community has been behaving quite nicely. I haven't seen anyone from my community do anything weird. I haven't seen anyone from my community being mean, even though I have seen comments that would lead me to believe otherwise if I wasn't like reading the stream chat myself. So I see no reason not to respond to people who had actual questions or actual qualms with the mod. And of course, you know, it's fine to think that something I made is bad. It's fine to think that I made a bad decision. I would just like you to, you know, remember that this is all about the game in the end of the day. So the first thing I wanted to address was actually about the academy, because the academy on stream did not have a sound. So I was wondering if there's a bug in the project that causes it to not play in sound, and there is none.
We're with you, Captain.
So the academy just normally plays the sound. And as with you, it just worked as intended. I think what happened on the stream was maybe that one of the sound options could have been disabled. There are some ways to disable them on accident. For example, you can press Ctrl S, I think, and it disables unit acknowledgements and stuff like that. So maybe that happened. I'm not quite sure, but in any case, if the academy did not play sound, that would have not been intentional. And here I want to expand. This is a silly example, of course, but I want to expand on one more thing, that obviously I'm not a professional team, and even though this mod has been in development for a long time, it is entirely possible that you stumble upon something that's a bug. I don't think any bug has happened on the stream, that's not a native StarCraft bug. So for example, there was one instance when a siege tank exploded when it was forced to siege in a position where a missile turret was building. This is normal StarCraft behavior, like this is not caused by the mod. This just always happens normally. So yeah, so that's one example of something that's just StarCraft being StarCraft. But otherwise, it's entirely possible to find something that's an issue with the mod, because you know I don't have infinite time to test, and even though I had a lot of helpful people that playtested this for me, and I have a lot of video footage to come through to find bugs from my testers, it's impossible to catch everything, right? So now that we got the incredibly important academy thing out of the way, I also wanted to comment on one more thing. In your master, do you have something like the hotkey menu? And here you can actually rebind hotkeys for earlier units. If you do this, then the in-game hotkey indicators will not be accurate for the mod, because I am using a way to display shortcuts that's a little bit antiquated. Maybe I could have been a bit smarter about it, but I wasn't. So if you remind Yamato to something other than Y, this will not be accurate. In that case, the only accurate thing will be the keybind that you have in the menu, in the custom remastered hotkey menu. So, moving on to like balance topics. One thing that I've seen really often was that Zerg feel way too strong. My idea with the Zerg was that they do indeed feel pretty strong. They should feel strong, or more so that individual Zerg should be really strong. And why is that? It's because for vanilla I want Zerg specifically to feel scary. I wanted them to feel like a threat. And I had this like memory or vision, you could say, from vanilla cinematics or from playing StarCraft as a kid, that, you know, Hydras, for example, are supposed to be this. You are supposed to fear for your life when you run into a Hydra. I didn't think that the normal Hydras quite fit that description, even though they are perfectly fine and very good units. So I wanted to move them into a direction where they are more expensive and they have a bit higher stats. So obviously that makes them very strong, but you also have to think that one Hydra now costs as much as 5 Marines, and this is not counting gas. So you have a situation where Marines are extremely supply inefficient, because 5 Marines are 5 supply, but they will, it will not be an issue for 5 Marines to kill one Hydra. So as a Terran, in my mind, you are actually put in a quite interesting position where you sort of want to play more like a Zerg would normally in the unmodded game, because Marines are so cheap and so fast to build and so supply efficient. You can sort of use them with box micro, much like you would use Zerglings. So you can use their supply inefficiency and their resource efficiency to build a resource advantage over time. And why do resource advantages matter? Because, contrary to what was shown on stream, or what was, I don't mean shown on stream, sorry, that came off wrong. Contrary to what was discussed in the comments, in the like stream, you know, chat thingy, a lot of people were under the belief that AI has infinite money, and I don't really blame them for that, because RTS games don't really have a good way of showcasing you how wealthy your opponent is. I think there's like no way at all to check enemy income in StarCraft, and in other RTSs it's not really something that comes up often either. So as long as your enemy is attacking you and as long as they are defending, you won't really ever know if they are using resources or not. So I wanted to clarify that your enemies in fact do use resources most of the time. I won't pretend that there are no exceptions. The exceptions are mainly related with enemies that do not mine at all. This is, for example, Orange in the 8th Terran mission of Brood War. And in that situation, your enemy will often be instigated with being able to spend a certain amount of resources over time, or maybe it's just infinite resources in some other circumstances too. I think in the attack sequence, when you are defending the temple in the last Protoss mission in Brewer, the enemy just has infinite money or something to that effect. And also, it may be the case that your enemies have some cheats regarding money. So they still mine and they still can run out of cash, but for example, they mine 20% more minerals, stuff like that, or they waste less minerals when mining. So they only take 2 out of the crystal, but they still receive 8. And why is that? It's so that the player can get expansions in a relatively untouched state after the AI has been mining for quite some time, while the AI still receives a normal income. I use that quite often because the AI is way less resource efficient than the player. This is just a presupposition I have to make almost at all times, because I have the assumption that the player is not going to be suiciding their units, because the player probably knows that the more units they have, the less they will lose. So if the player is playing in a standard way, they will be significantly more resource efficient than the enemy. And then it's fine for the enemy to cheat a little bit when it comes to mining. So this is definitely cheating, but it's not infinite resources. It's not always used either. And why this matters is, as you will attack enemies, and as you could see in the stream yesterday, during the end of biting the bullet, you will eventually reach a state where the enemy has no money left to defend, or maybe because you have attacked them and they had to mount up some defense, they have no money left to attack for some time, which will in turn delay their next attack. And because the attack is delayed, was delayed, you will get some extra time for for your effort, in a way, for how you try to attack. You can see in this map that the blue enemy starts with 500 resources about, and they have a lot of probes, so they will be able to mine quite a lot quickly. But from my experience and from how AI works, it's relatively easy to run them out of money, even though they have a lot. And I don't know what mission to pick, but I can guarantee you that not in every map they start like with max workers and stuff. This is actually quite uncharacteristic. Let's maybe check. I'm trying to remember. I think in Revolution they don't have a base that's fully fleshed out. Yeah, they just have a couple of workers here and a lot of workers here. That's not the best example. I'm not going to go through every map, you just have to trust me, or maybe not, that they don't always start with an economy that's at 100%. And more so, they typically don't start with expansions or don't start with all expansions, which they will use to mine more, right? Because you could already see in the first Terran missions that the AI expands over time, and as they expand, they typically get either some tech that they wouldn't normally have, and they obviously mine more so they can attack more often, stuff like that. Did other Zerg units receive buffs? I think off the top of my head, the biggest changes are hydraulics, which are more expensive and stronger. Guardians, which we'll talk about in a little bit more, and lurkers were replaced with impalers for vanilla specifically. Impalers are like single target lurkers. They work much like the Heart of the Swarm impalers. Why Guardians are so imbalanced or over the top? They can do a lot of stuff. My idea with Guardians for vanilla was that I wanted them to be a capital ship. They are priced as a capital ship. They cost 275 gas and 250 minerals, and for supply. They are definitely strong, but they cost quite a lot. So you can dispatch them in a resource efficient manner, for example with waves. And I think you might have noticed that the numbers in which you see Guardians and Hydralisks do seem indicative of how more expensive they are. Because in Brood War, if you play that far, you will definitely be seeing Hydras and Guardians in numbers way higher than what's in vanilla. There's some extra stuff that's pretty StarCrafty in my mind, because ultimately for me, what's the most important often is that I keep StarCraft feeling StarCrafty, if that makes sense. So even if I have that fantasy of Zerg being scary, I still want this game to play like StarCraft, because I like StarCraft. So I put some limitations of what I come up with. So Guardians have an extra limitation of not being able to fire precisely at a target. They actually fire on a grid, and their anti-ground projectiles, even though they are AoE, they also hit randomly on that grid. So they won't always hit the main target, or they won't, to be more precise, they won't always hit their AoE centered on the main target. Which you may think is random and bullshit, but for me, randomness is a big part of StarCraft. There is a lot of innate randomness in Brood War, and I think it makes for a nice gameplay storytelling, so to speak. It gives units more opportunities to do something that you wouldn't really expect them to do. And while I know that's maybe an unpopular point of view today, I've been playing in the past a lot of games like D&D, and I think it's just fine to have some randomness in the game still. So another thing the stream was talking about was if you have to play missions in a meta way, and that's sort of complicated to answer because there are certainly things that I expect the player to do. When I design missions, I do have some idea in mind of what how the player should play like. But this is not necessarily to say that I have like a one-to-one plan of what should be done. It's more that I want to nudge you to into a certain direction. For example, in Afforestation, you may notice that there are relatively few resources scattered around the map. And in my mind, what this should tell to the player is that you should not be wasting your money on production structures too much. In fact, because Marines are so quick to build, you will probably only need like 1 or 2 barracks, and this is all that you need to win the map. Because when you think about it, if you have barracks that cost 250, then at the cost of 1 barracks you could build 10 Marines. So if you have 3 barracks, or maybe let's say 5 barracks, because I think that's maybe what happened on stream. If you have 5 barracks, instead you could have 2 barracks and 30 marines. You can imagine that 30 marines are usually enough to win this mission by themselves, so you are sort of punished by over-macroing on a map that is both small and has very limited resources. And is it on me that I don't tutorialize in a way where this is really clear to read, or is it bad that I have this, like, I create a scenario where there's this expectation that you are almost punished for macroing too much, or punished in the way where you don't win as quickly as you could, right? Because you can still win, obviously. I would like to think that this is something we shouldn't necessarily tutorialize for. Maybe something like a hint that, you know how in StarCraft 2 you have hints that pop up in the bottom of your screen and you can click them and then you can read something about the map or something about how to play. That would be really cool to have, but I'm not able to have this UI element even though I'm modding. There's some things that are still limiting to me. There's some limitations, so I cannot get that type of UI element, and I don't feel as a map maker and as a modder that it's appropriate for me to have a text hint on the screen that should say, hey, don't build too much buildings, like try to be resource efficient or something, because this is not something for me to say. Either the player comes to this conclusion on their own, or they don't and they figure out a different way to beat this mission, which is perfectly fine. But the reason why I think it's sort of important to make this observation in this map is because this keeps happening later on. So you don't always have unlimited resources, and as long as you stay on limited resources, the fact that factories in vanilla are kind of expensive makes you lose a lot of momentum on over macroing. And I would also say that bases in vanilla Terran are so small that if you get too many factories, too many barracks, you often create a situation for yourself where the map becomes really frustrating to play. And is that bad from a map design standpoint? My perspective is that not every map could play the same, so not every map could require you to macro as much as possible. And you may feel that maps in vanilla Terran are kind of biased against macroing, against going wide, and I think you would be right, because vanilla Terran in my mind lends itself towards like quick play, towards creating advantages early, towards being really efficient, and the way I played, for example, was just mostly going mass marine. So I ended up playing Terran in a really Zerg way, and as you might guess, I'm a Zerg main, so this was like my experiment, I guess, also in making Terran play in a way that's nicer to me. That's not to say that I removed Terranness altogether, I guess, because Mech is untouched. Mech just has cheaper vultures, buffed Goliaths and buffed tanks. But Bio is definitely more Zergy because of Marine's function. And even though I'm talking to you about limitations of map design and how I envision enforcing certain strategies on players, let's say, I don't think that maps are hard enough to where you don't have any other options. Typically there's quite a few options to play a map. And while it's true that some of them are less efficient than others, I don't feel like the difficulty is too prohibitive, right? You can probably get away with like really silly stuff. You can get away with doing mass rave almost throughout the entire campaign. So you know, there are options certainly, and there are also like, this is hard to express. I think there are options, but you won't always get the same difficulty playing them. Does that make sense? Like, if your enemy is going Mass Firebat and Mass Defiler, and you decide to... There's no map where you are playing against Terran and Zerg in vanilla, but let's say, like, hypothetically, right? If your enemy is doing something that is really good against your staff, and you are playing Mass Marines, or maybe like the enemy is, you know, going scouts, and like the enemy has like an obvious base that builds a lot of scouts and carries, and you decide that you want to win the mission with firebats and tanks, like, you will obviously be punished. And so if you go mech against ghosts with lockdown, that will probably be a problem. And when can this be frustrating? This can be frustrating when you start him up and you don't necessarily know that there will be lockdown, which is completely fair. And I don't really know how I can answer that, other than sometimes it's fine to try more than one time. Because it's completely okay, I think, in a single player game to fail once or twice. I know it's frustrating because, you know, you don't play to lose, but at the same time, if you can't lose, I feel that this devalues the gameplay a lot. So I do make maps where losing is a possibility, and I hope that this makes like earning victory more rewarding. At least it does for me. And on that topic, on losing being frustrating and lose conditions, I also wanted to mention heroes. I'm not particularly happy with how heroes function right now. I also don't like that vanilla Terran is really heavy in terms of how many missions are that require a hero to survive. For me, this is a technical limitation for why I haven't solved it. I have a solution for that would make me satisfied in terms of gameplay feeling and narrative that I plan to implement in the future, but it hasn't been possible technically yet, and it's still not possible. I could, as a stopgap, obviously I could just disable defeat or when a hero is lost, but I was holding out on that definite solution, and thus I haven't implemented that stopgap solution. I understand that it's really frustrating to have so many maps with heroes and being able to lose when you lose a hero. I think right now the only answer I can give is that it's fine to save, like StarCraft has save functionality. I know that kind of sucks because it's not the most convenient thing in the world, and some people don't like saving, which is also fine. And if you don't like saving, it really sucks to lose 40 minutes into the mission. I'm hoping this can be solved in the future in a way that is satisfying to everyone. But for now, yeah, I understand and I acknowledge that this is not the best thing in the world and that it can be improved. And I'm really sorry for causing people unneeded frustration in a way. One more thing I wanted to tackle is to answer whether Terran is nerfed. I don't think so. I think things are just different. So if you try to play Terran in the same way you would play the vanilla game, you may find yourself... you may lead yourself to situations where you feel weaker. But overall, I would say that Terran has a lot of advantages against other races in vanilla, even though vanilla is kind of a polygon of things. There are definitely things in vanilla that are kind of changed for the sake of it in some way, because vanilla is something that was created only after Brood War. So for me, vanilla had to be something different. Like it had to be a different way to play StarCraft. So that's why you will see some changes that are maybe too heavy-handed, that are frustrating for some. I would appreciate it if you just approached vanilla as something that's a different way to play, and tried to evaluate it on that level. Obviously, this is not competitive StarCraft. I don't mean to. I haven't ever advertised this as a replacement for competitive StarCraft. This is so that you can have fun playing something that is still StarCraft, that still tells the StarCraft storyline, but in my opinion has better gameplay and shows you some cool stuff that hasn't been possible in StarCraft before and hasn't been made in StarCraft before. And I hope that it can make some more people enjoy StarCraft, but it won't replace competitive StarCraft. And it's not meant to replace competitive StarCraft. So I would appreciate if this was not, UDIP was not evaluated the same way that competitive StarCraft is. To give some more details on Terran, Firebats were buffed. They are strictly better than they were in the vanilla game. I have seen some comments that they are nerfed. I don't know why, this is definitely not true. Marines are weaker but less expensive and way quicker to build. Goliaths had their base range increased because they don't have access to Karn. Siege tanks had their unsieged DPS increased and have 30 more HP, but they also build slightly slower. Vultures just had their cost decreased. This is partly because factory is more expensive, of course. Wraiths had their range and anti-ground damage increased, and also had their armor type changed to medium instead of large. And siege tanks are completely reworked to work kind of more like dragons from Warcraft 2 than normal vanilla PCs. In vanilla, battlecruisers also specifically have a AoE Yamato, so that it's easier to deal with marine spam and other similar tactics. Did I already mention infinite money? I think I did, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. And is there anything more to say? I think I about covered everything I wanted to cover. Once again, I really appreciate more people checking out UEDIP. So thanks for playing. It's always really fun to watch. If you guys have any more questions, please let me know in the comments. I also know that I'm not really the best speaker, so there has been probably a few ohs and ahs that don't really make this the best listening experience, but I'm not a native speaker. It sometimes takes me a while to formulate my thoughts. And yeah, I hope we can all get along. See you.